I think we have to keep the euro. Just imagine, for example, Germany. We have, in the moment, we are lucky to be quite strong in economics. But if we didn't have the euro, that would mean that our products would be very expensive. Nobody could buy them.
Va empeorando, cada vez peor.
It's getting worse and worse. Many people are being thrown out of their houses and the banks are taking everything. They've cut my pension. I still work and they've cut mine and my husband's pension. It's not fair.
De mi marido y la mía, y no hay derecho.
Η Ελλάδα είναι η χώρα στην οποία μπορεί κανείς να δει.
Greece is the country which gives you a complete image of the euro crisis. The results of this crisis can be clearly seen by anyone walking on the streets of any large or small city in Greece. It's very ugly. It's tragic.
Είναι τραγικά.
Well, it seems we're just minutes away from the announcement of the results of the European elections 2014 here on europartv. Voting began in the UK and the Netherlands 4 days ago. We'll be cutting live to the official results when they come in. Meantime, let's look at the issue that's concentrated the minds of leaders and the protests of people across Europe for the past 5 years or so, the management of the Eurozone crisis. With me now to discuss that are Keuleneer, Professor at Brussels School of Economics, and Professor Giannis Tsamarogelis, Professor of Economics at the University of the Aegean in Greece. I mean, let's go to some of these comments that people were making that we just heard before that introduction. That's the fact of the matter, isn't it, Professor de Keuleneer, that the human impact and the human cost of the management of the Eurozone crisis has been forgotten?
Right. Well, what's mostly been forgotten is that the reason for the crisis is really to start with a financial crisis and the run-up to that financial crisis, meaning exaggerate deficits and exaggerate real estate financing, real estate bubble. And as there was a whole build-up to this crisis, and well, the mechanisms of the Eurozone were not at all equipped to deal with that kind of crisis.
Although they should have been, according to the Euro terms and conditions.
Well, they should have been, they were in fact designed to avoid this kind of crisis, but they were in fact not applied. And then the consequence, for many people in the comprehension, in the understanding of many people, it is the Eurozone itself.
Okay, let me put that point to Professor Tsamarogelis. Do you share that the point that you go back to the problem at its fiscal root and that's what's got to be sorted out, no, whatever happens to the people?
It's not only the fiscal root, it's also fiscal along with the monetary root. It has two roots. As it is designed, the monetary system in Europe, the result comes out to be that whenever the economy goes well, then the monetary system, the banking system provides money. And when the economy does not go well, the monetary system and the banking system absorbs money, which is the bad case that we are living now. This is what creates more crisis, more bad situation for the ordinary people and the small enterprises. We need another kind of mix of policies. That is, okay, we have to go to fiscal consolidation, but in order to help entrepreneurs, to help firms, we have to provide liquidity in order to facilitate them to overcome the crisis.
Can I ask you just to hold that, because we're going to cut once more back to the hemicycle for another MEP. Mariam, over to you. Indeed, we left our debate on the Euro management of the Eurozone crisis with Professor Tsamarogelis saying that the fiscal approach, the approach to get budget deficits down and to try and reduce sovereign debt isn't all that you could do. You speak, I think, from the heart in Greece, where you've had to deal with the prescriptions of the Troika and the European Union. How should that change in the future?
It should change immediately, actually, by providing liquidity to the economy. Providing it's the main issue, because without liquidity,
how do you do that?
You don't have
pull
the
money
economy,
from trees.
You don't have money circulating the economy. You don't have firms, existing anymore, especially the small firms, and you have huge unemployment. An average owner of a small firm faces higher taxes, lower demand for his products, and the same, what he has to do, he has to fire people and reduce wages. At the same time, though, he's facing a 12% interest rate on his loans, which is as you are murdering the entrepreneur there. That's why you have 30% unemployment. You have to change the policy. You have to facilitate through monetizing the economy, creating money and providing loans.
Okay, okay, we're going to interrupt. I'm just about to ask you a question. We're going to turn back to the hemicycle. I think, Professor Tsamarourgelis, you were saying yourself that the activities of the Troika need to stop in Greece because there's just too much prescription going on and not enough stimulus or growth. Is that right?
It is. And I would proceed on that and say that the European Union has to change also. The way that it faces and the way that acts in order to overcome the crisis, it's a wrong prescription. We need more money. We need to find ways for cheap money in order to stimulate the economy.
Okay, let's just hold that thought there. We were on the Troika. The Troika is a key instrument here in the Eurozone economic crisis management. Let's just watch this short video on its function and activities. Let's return to our debate because although we have breaking news all around us, it is a critical debate, and I hope we'll sort of find our way through to future ideas. Can I ask you, Professor de Keuleneer, what you make of all that? You know, here's a call for an increase in liquidity, an end to austerity, because they just don't work. They don't allow businesses to grow and the business of creating jobs to start.
No, that's right. Now, I think what we need, we do need structural reforms in many areas in Europe, all over Europe. Some of those reforms are common to all of Europe. It is the financial. And there I totally agree with Professor Tsamarourgelis that in many European countries there is a shortage of financing simply because we have a system that's far too much banco-centric.
But there's, yeah, no, I understand that, and that's going to be a question that we come to in a second, the dominance of the banks. But this is a question of policy drive and policy direction, right. And the call on this side of the table is an end to austerity. It doesn't work.
Right. The problem is that the austerity is, in many countries, the only way that has been possible to force reforms that were needed. Some reforms were needed, are needed. Of course, in some Mediterranean countries, there was a problem of tax collection, there was a problem of social transfers. In Belgium, for instance, and in France and in Italy, there is a problem of financing the social security to a large extent by levies on labor costs, which means that labor costs are far too high, and the difference between the gross cost of labor and the net income of people is far too high. Okay,
let me put those points to Professor Tsamarourgelis. Do you accept any of that? Do you accept some of it? What's good and what's bad?
All of that, but again, I would proceed and say that we need to look again the banco-centric European structure. We are dependent on the banking sector too heavily. And this creates a huge problem for the future of Europe. We need another kind of thinking on the financing and on the monetizing of the economy. We need more serious capital markets so as to reduce the role of banks. We need another kind of banking system with more competition, more banks, small banks, private banks, corporate banks. So another mixture of the financing sector which will facilitate growth. Our main issue is low, cheap money and a lot of money available to those who need it.
And Professor de Keuleneer, how much of that is a sort of utopia given the snail's pace at which reform within the financial and banking sector in Europe actually moves?
I don't think it is utopia. I think it is absolutely necessary. And for that, we need for the governments to realize that they can get out of the grip of banks There has
you
been...
say that Britain, for example, let's talk specifics here. Britain runs about 75% of the financial services of Europe, and has got an incredibly powerful city of London with a very powerful lobby supported by the current government there. What chance is there of reforming along the lines that both of you seem to want when you confront resistance like that?
Well, Britain is a good example because Britain is the country which has gone the furthest at the moment to separate and to ask that commercial banks that take deposits and make loans do not engage in speculative market activities. Thus Britain from 2017-18 is going to be a pioneer there. Other countries, France and Germany, have refused that kind of reform because they are really taken hostage, blackmailed by their large banks. And we do need capital markets that are much more active, more competition in banks. We need those reforms. The US is today much further than Europe, and some reforms are now imposed on Europe by the US because the US, amongst other, in the derivative markets and in the clearing of derivatives, the US is imposing to Europe some measures that European banks had been able to resist so far, but the US is imposing them because...
And is that, Europe then becomes a block to proper capital flows, does it? Is that the point of the US?
Yes, the US is threatening to apply an extraterritorial status to the dollar-based activities, which of course would be a threat to the City of London and to big European banks. So some of those reforms are not utopian anymore.
Okay. Can you hold that thought? I hope we'll have time to return to this because I've got some other questions as well, but for the moment I'm going to hand over to Mariam. Mariam.
Thank you again, Paul.